Alrighty guys, so I'm going to make a start. It's 3 o'clock, so welcome to my Facebook Live for this week. Got some really good questions. As usual, you guys always come through with the goods with some really good questions. So just reiterating what I just said just previously, what I'm going to do, I'm going to read the question, I'm going to present my thoughts, and then I'm going to hand it over to you guys. And I'm just going to read some comments and some input from you guys. Because there is that little bit of a delay, so please just start typing when I'm still talking. Don't wait for me to go, okay, over to you guys now, because there's just that little bit of a delay. So please, thought comes into your head, write it down. Okay, so first question is a good can of worms question, actually. It's saddles, or has this been done before? This is from Beck. So can be a can of worms and can definitely be a massive can of worms. So I just wrote down 10 points about my top 10 thoughts about saddles and my experience with saddles. Firstly, saddles can cause a lot of damage and discomfort and be a source of discomfort for the horse. That is very true, and I've had experience with that. However, let me just talk about saddle fitting. Saddle fitting, I find a bit of a dark art, and I hope I'm not going to get a whole lot of negative hate mail from the saddle fitters out there, because I absolutely respect you, but what I tend to find is that there tends to be no consensus between saddle fitters. So what I've experienced in my life is that, I get a saddle fitter and then I might get another one out, and that one would tell me the saddle fitting that was done before was completely evil and destroying my horse. And then someone else would come out, they'd look at what that person had done, and they'd tell me it was absolutely terrible and the worst thing for the horse. So what I tend to find with saddle fitters is that I found someone that I trusted. And what I mean by that is that they talked sense. They were practical. They weren't trying to squeeze me into like a 15-inch saddle because that's all the horse could handle. They were actually thoughtful about that. They were practical. They showed their care. They checked in. They wanted feedback. And the main thing as well, they were really honest about the saddle companies that sponsored them. Because what I found out, a lot of saddle fitters are actually sponsored by certain companies, and they would actually give advice to push people into buying, just say the saddle of the company that sponsored them, okay, because they got a cut of it. But they weren't actually honest about that, okay? They weren't really clear about that. So, I go through just say things with my clients is that, they'd all go to a certain saddle fitter and suddenly they'd all have exactly the same saddle that wasn't really appropriate and would 9 times out of 10 end up not appropriate for that particular horse. So that's a thing. So find a saddle fitter that you can trust, that is open and honest and shows they care, okay? What is correct or what is not correct and all these things is a little bit debatable. As I said, it's up to the person to show some care. And what I found is when I found like a good saddle fitter that did that, they were checking in all the time. So I could see that they were very dedicated to make sure that my horses were going really well. Okay, my next tip is try a lot of saddles, okay? Just try a lot. Now, the saddle has to fit the horse, yes, but it has to fit you as well. Don't ever go down the rabbit hole I did of having a difficult to fit horse, and I go, right, I'm just going to get the best saddle for them, and then what happened is it wasn't good for me. If I don't sit in the saddle, if you don't sit in the saddle right, it's actually going to cause the horse problems. So the saddle has to be good for you and good for the horse. So please make sure, try lots of saddles. Try your friend's saddles. And if you got that really good saddle fitter that you've made a connection without them, they should, come look at your horse, have an idea about the types of saddles that will fit and bring you a bit of a collection to try them. So just try and ride in as many saddles as possible. But yeah, if the saddle doesn't fit you and you're fighting with the saddle, that's just as bad as the saddle not fitting the horse, because it makes you in the wrong position. That's another thing, is people really fight with their position and stuff like that. If the saddle actually fits you and it's being fitted correctly, you shouldn't have to fight it. Okay, so lots of people, struggle with their position, and then as soon as you put them in a good saddle, it's just like position problems disappear. So, try lots of saddles, find the one that you feel the most comfortable and safe in. Okay, so a good saddle fitter will help you do that. Now, also, don't be a snob. Like, I remember once I had my eyes set on this, this really good quality saddle, and my saddle fitter brought along this, quite cheap saddle. It was only like about you know, $1,500, which is, you know, pretty cheap for a saddle. And I put it on thinking, oh, here we go, I just got to put this one on. But I knew this more expensive one would probably be better. And lo and behold, I was really shocked. It was the greatest saddle that I've ever sat in. And, you know, I ended up buying it, and it was like, it's a great saddle. So, yeah, just because saddles don't cost very much doesn't mean that it's not going to actually be a good saddle. Yeah, try friend saddles. Okay, try as many saddles as possible. But yeah, make sure that the saddle you pick fits the horse but also feels comfortable and safe for you. The next is buy secondhand. Like, I've sold so many saddles for not even half the price of what I bought for them. So, you know, shop around, find that saddle and then go shopping, you know, to see if you can find it secondhand, because you'll save a lot of money. So you can actually end up getting a really good quality saddle for, you know, half its price. Point 8 is avoid all-purpose saddles. I'm not a fan of an all-purpose saddle. They really don't help you with your position. They're kind of not a dressage and not a jumping, which means they put you in a bit of a funny position. So avoid English all-purpose saddles. Also, be careful with half-breeds and stock saddles as well. I've had a few people that have struggled to actually get them to actually fit and be comfortable on the horse. So make sure with those particular type of saddles is that you find people that actually know how to fit them properly. It's not that I'm not a fan of them, you know, there can be great half breeds and there can be great stock saddles, don't get me wrong, but I found that people struggle with actually fitting their horse properly, and I think that's because they haven't got the right person to actually fit them. Next point is saddle pads. I'm a massive fan of thin line products, so thin line saddle pads and saddle products. So I've actually got a thin line actual, you know, saddle pad. You know, and it's black. It's not the most fancy thing in the world, and that's really hard because I'm like a massive matchy-match person. Like, I love my matching stuff like you wouldn't believe, but you know, the more I learn about horses' comfort and their back and everything like that, it's a black thin line dress like saddle pad, and I've actually got the sheepskin underneath it that's actually attached to it. That's my favorite pad. So it's expensive, but it's worth it. So I just have that one pad that I used all the time. And look, if I went somewhere fancy, I'd wear my matchy-match stuff. But most of the time, 99% of the time, I rode in my thin line. Same with Western pads. Get a good quality pad. That's really important. My final point is on girths. So with a girth, just make sure you're not over-tightening it. Lots of people just feel the side of a girth. It's actually very important that you actually feel under the girth area of the horse, because that's where the pressure is. Just because it's loose, a little bit loose, and you can put your hand under it and the side, doesn't mean it's not tight as hell, you know, underneath the chest of the horse. So please make sure you check that, because girth over tightening is actually a massive problem. So yeah, you know, I also don't want the girth hanging off, don't get me wrong, but I want you to check that, and you'd be surprised. Most people will over tighten their girth. So make sure you check that. I'm also a fan of Matters girth, and I just want you to all know, not sponsored by either of these people. These are just good products. Like, so what I found is that if I got good quality products, like, you know, one really good thin line pad, you know, and spent the money on that really set my horse up, and a really good Matters girth, that really set my horse up as well. A number of years ago, I had a horse that was like a bit roly-poly, like didn't really have much of a wither, and I had a lot of trouble with saddle slipping. And I had the most amazing girth, and I can't remember the name of it, and I'd like to promote it, but I can't, because it didn't slip. Like, it was really amazing, and it was really quite comfortable on the horse as well. But one day it exploded. It actually fell apart, so I'm not going to recommend that one. All right, so have I got any comments on saddling or saddle stuff? Okay, so Zoe has a question. Is there any obligation for professionals like saddle fitters to disclose sponsorship or financial arrangements? I know it is in some industries. Look, I think it is, you know, best to disclose your conflicts of interest when you're selling something to someone, but I don't know if there's any code. There are probably some saddle fitters out there that do know. I just think it's really important, and I do know that it doesn't always happen, or hasn't happened to me in the past. Tracy Marshall, I have a new mare who is so wonderful on the ground, but she can be a bit stressy. She's confident if I lead her through water, but as soon as I'm riding, it turns into an issue. She's fearful of it. Okay, cool. Hang on to that thought, Tracy. I'm going to address probably that later. Thin line trifecta are shimmable. Yeah, they're great. Thin line products are really, really cool. Kath, thanks for the advice about the girth. I've always wondered about how tight it should be. Yeah. If you put your hand right underneath at that point of the, just right under the, where the belly and the chest kind of meet at that girth area, and feel the pressure there, and you'll be surprised. It's pretty tight. How tight is tight enough? So what I want you to do, Hayley, saddle Finn up, and tighten it up, and then try to put your hand under that point, like the lowest point of the chest girth area, and you'll see that it's pretty damn tight. So yeah, just play around with that. Of course, I don't want it flapping around, but I also don't want my hand not to fit. Lots of people tighten the girth so much they can't put their hand at the side. That's absolutely crushing pressure when you put your hand underneath. Tracy, okay, cool, getting off topic. That's okay, hang on to it, because it's a good question. All right, next question. I would like to know what you do when round penning a horse that ear pins when you ask it to leave and do an upward transition. I've found becoming much quieter with the ask works, but I'd like to know what you recommend. Yeah. Okay, so first of all, you got to know why horses pin their ears. They pin their ears with negative thoughts. Okay, it's when they're perceiving it negatively. Now, they can do it for two reasons. It is basically feeling defensive. However, it can be feeling defensive and concerned that it's about to get into trouble. And that's what you'll find when you're just really, really consistent with your ask and how you present yourself, and repeat, and the horse gets exposure to you being really reliable, that defensiveness goes away. So that's if it's defensiveness concern. But sometimes it can be a defensiveness annoyance, okay? And so when it's defensiveness annoyance, I look how the horse will leave. So just say you told me this horse pins its ears or whatever when you ask it to do something. So what I would do, I'd put it in the round yard and I'd ask it to leave, and I'm watching. I'm watching to see how the horse responds to my ask. If the horse goes off like it's electrocuted, okay, like it's really worried, then I know it's that negative thought kind of worry. And I know that just repeating and making myself really calm, and really having clear thoughts and being very clear with my signals and my movements, I know that horse is going to feel better about that because they'll sense I'm reliable. However, if the horse doesn't necessarily go, they go with a lot less. They go, but they go a bit sluggishly with this kind of cranky look on my face. Then I know what's happening is there's actually annoyance there. Okay, it's where the horse is actually going. It's actually thinking, okay, I know what I've got to do, but I really am annoyed by doing this. And that means the horse isn't actually being motivated to follow you. Okay, what it's doing, it's reacting, it's recognizing the cue, but it feels annoyed about it, kind of thing. So with that horse, I'll actually follow through. Okay, I'll point and follow through. And for some people that's counterintuitive because they go, oh, the horse is getting worried or annoyed by it and therefore it doesn't like it. And it's like, yeah, but what's happening, it's keeping that kind of the ask in its head and it's being annoyed by it. What I want it to do is I want it to feel good and feel good that it can navigate me. So I'll follow through and come down, so that horse gets a bit like, whoa, like, oh my goodness, I'll come down on it like a bit of a ton of bricks, so that when it asks, I want it to be like a little bit worried to begin with and then go, you know what, I can navigate this. So what I do is you got to get the horse out of that recognizing kind of annoyance, because they're actually contemplating whether they can tolerate it or not. So I just make sure I follow through, and it's all about motivation. I escalate to get that motivation so that horse is motivated to see my ask and want to go and want to follow me. And it's really motivated too, because that stops that kind of pause, should I, shouldn't I, do I have to, this is annoying moment. Okay, so I hope that helps. But with both those, I normally will see the ear pinning go. So just by, if the horse is worried, like they're thinking negative, worried, that'll go pretty quickly with just showing the horse I'm really reliable. And if I follow through on those horses that are being a bit annoyed and negative minded about me doing it, that gets fixed up really fast as well. There is another thing that can happen if and it's quite rare, but there's some horses that just, because of their past, because of what they experienced, they just hold that bit of a negative association with it. And so you'll get them better, but every now and then you'll see them just be kind of re-triggered that it can be negative. But if you make sure that you are consistent as hell, and that you're very good with your timing and feel, and the horse can work out that it can navigate you successfully without having any pressure or any threats of pressure, then its emotions will get better. Okay, so now I'm just going to go over to you guys just to read some comments. Zoe, good note to check under the chest girth. Yeah, I think a lack of strength is same Bridget from too tight a girth so far. Yes, sometimes it comes in handy. Okay, so no thoughts on that ear pinning. Okay, so really it all comes down to, you fix that by being consistent, but by making sure that you're in a good space, that you're really thinking about how you actually ask the horse. And my most common thing when I get people that I comment when I'm coaching is I've got to tell people two things. One, slow down that point, right? Do it like you're in slow motion, because I want the horse to really make sure, I want to make sure the horse really got a chance to see that point, that it was real theatrical and, it was really there. So the horse had no kind of excuse for missing it. And then I'll follow through. Okay. So I give them the lot of time to see that it's slow, it's there, but there's a follow through. So the two things I say in coaching a lot is slow down your point. And the next thing I say is reliably follow through. You've got to be consistent with your follow through. It's got to be slow point, start clicking, start whipping. Okay, it's got to be like that. So the horse identifies this slow point. Okay, and that makes them feel better because they're navigating you. All right, next question. Okay. Hi, Shelley. What to do when the horse you have threatens to be aggressive at feeding time? If by chance you need to take her hay before she finishes, she will pin her ears, clench her nostrils, run at you, but is not yet attempted to bite. It's all threat. I've tried to walk in with the whip and this makes her worse. It's like fights on. She will retaliate with more aggression. I'll try to videotape her. Now what happened was really cool with this question here. I got to actually see some footage of the horse and what was going on. So I've just got some points. So I want to tell you what I advised with this particular horse in this particular case of food aggression. So when I saw the footage, I got to see that this horse has obviously been subjected to living with an insecure bully horse that bullied it off its food, because it's really defensive. It's defensive about food. And I'd probably put it on a mild scale. Okay, so when I read the question, I thought, that horse is really attacking and being quite threatening. But it's being just more like, this is my food, this is my food. It's not really, and that's where she does say it. It's all threat, but there's no actual kind of lashing out. But of course, it could go that far, and we want not to happen. So first of all, I could see this horse is defensive about food, which says a lot about its life in the past or what it's been subjected to. And that's why, you shouldn't have, and this is a young horse, and that young horse was subjected to obviously like an insecure bully that would bully it off its food, and that does create some problems down the track. So really, if you got a bully, they should be separated at dinner time so the horses don't learn to be worried about their food in that way. So this was my advice. Feed the horse and leave it alone so it doesn't get defensiveness triggered. That's what I said. If it's had a bad time, having to protect its food, just leave it alone. Give it food, leave it alone. Okay, so it learns through time that food doesn't have to be protected here. This is a different environment because this is a new horse, okay? The next thing I said is get groundwork happening with this horse and get it really good at backing up and sending. Okay, so really, really good at that. Then practice groundwork with the horse in its actual yard. So I had a look at the yard and the surface and the space and everything like that. And it was, it was good enough to be able to groundwork the horse in there. Then I said to, put the horse in there, remove the halter and practice backing and sending minus the halter. So the horse will still respond to the cue minus the halter. Okay, then I suggested bring in a bag of food, but have it in a bag, like put it in a chaff bag or something like that, and back the horse up, away, empty the bag. Now at any time the horse comes forward, you just got to pretend you're training and you've got to, escalate as you would as if you were training. Then, back the horse up, But don't walk away and leave, and don't ever walk away from food with that horse until it is stationary or actually walking away from you. Okay, so never walk away when the horse is coming towards you, because horses read that of like, oh, I've moved your feet off my food. Note that in. Okay, so you allow the horse, you lead the horse with the food, but only when it's stationary or walking away. Then I said, once, the horse is able to do that, what I recommended is, throw some hay to it, then walk in and ask the horse to back up. And if it gets aggressive or whatever, send it away. Really drive it away and down the other end of its yard. Okay? And then again, don't walk away until that horse is stationary or not walking towards you. But I said, drop a carrot. Drop a carrot in its hay. Okay, because what I want that horse to learn is that when it gets pushed off its food and it comes back to its food, not only is its food there, but it's got more nice things in it. So I thought this was like a nice little creative way to try with that horse. So, I'll get a report back to see how the horse is going. All right, so I'm just going to go over now to your comments and let's have a look. Okay, Joe, thanks, Shelley. I think the slow theatrical is going to be the ticket with this mare. Absolutely. Okay, Tegan, poor Ruby has to suck it up and have the tightest girth possible, otherwise the saddle goes wee around the side. I did, and I saw that in action. Okay. Yeah, and it's made her paranoid now about other horses. Yeah. You might want to look at some other ways, like some other girths or some other things under the saddle to actually help with grip with that, with her. Yeah, because too tight girths can be quite, they can actually cause a bit of a problem down the track when they're super duper tight, because it actually stops them from breathing and using their muscles and gets tension through their body, which, stops a lot of things. Like I'm aware we don't want it slipping, but I'd look at some other options and stuff like that. I'd problem solve that and try a few things. Okay, Zoe, slow theatrical, believing in magic totally makes a difference with Bridget. Yep. Also really helps her if she's having an opinion or a negative memory or association, because it gives her time to realize that she's got the tools to navigate people now. Yeah, and I'm going to touch on that. Horses knowing that they've got the tools to navigate people is really important. And when I get to the, last question, that's what it's all about. So hang on to that thought. Hey, Andre, 7:15 in the morning here in Germany. Good morning. Okay, Tracy, my gelding has started to pin his ears since I got a new mare. They do not eat or are not turned out together, so have now started to take the dressage whip in, but in the past, I've taught him to step off or get in the box, which he does. But now delivering the food to him, it started this again. He's making him wait, e.g. I own the food, then let him when I choose, so I should back him up into a corner of the stall away from me in the yard. Yes, okay, so what's happened, the arrival of the new horse has triggered this within the horse, this sense of competition. Okay, this resources being scarce, etc. So it's triggered him back into his old behavior. Yeah, so you got to go back, and it's just what I said before. It's about making sure, and don't, you can get in there with a whip when there's food and, drive them back and make a big drama out of it. But it's actually better and fairer for them is get every signal and cue that you want them to respond to really good, in groundwork and, in their yard minus food. And then it just makes sure because what's happening, the food is kind of ends up driving their behavior more than you do. That's when they get food aggressive. So what you got to do lots of practice of you being the most motivating thing, not the food. So get them really good with that, with responding to you, and then bring the food back in, and you won't have much drama at all when you do that. Okay, so you've got to elevate yourself in the scale of things, that you're more important than food. Okay. Zoe, I love that you had to leave your food, but it magically got better when things, it magically got better things in its approach. Yeah, so that's what I thought. Yeah, make that horse think that, when it walks away from its food, it comes back and there's fabulous things there. Like, why not? Okay, horses can actually work stuff like that out. It doesn't all have to be, push and pull with them. They're pretty clever. Okay, Joe, back to saddles. Did you mention the type of girth? So many types. What do you think of anatomical ones? Yeah, anatomical ones are good. I usually find that when it comes to girth is I got to look at the actual shape of the horse and the actual saddle, because that's going to change depending on where the points are, and the saddle is what girth I go to. But I do like Maddie's girths. They're my favorite girths to actually use. I find they don't rub and they fit well, and typically they don't slip. But I suppose they always can. Yeah. Rebecca, my aunt unrugs my horse in the morning and he pins his ears at her when she goes to get the chest strap. Yeah, she's not confident to drive him, but I've told her to stick a carrot in his mouth. Will that make it worse? Look, it can if he's pinned his ears at her and then she gives him a carrot. That's positive reinforcement, so it actually can. What I'd suggest that she actually does, and the best thing to do, because rugging can actually end up causing a lot of problems, just like food aggression, horses can get aggressive with rugging. It's because a lot of movement's going on into their chest, around their chest area where their vision changes. And not only that, I think it might actually also be connected with horses actually feeling negative about being rugged sometimes, so that can trigger it. So there's a few things that can trigger their negative reaction there with rugs. Look, the best greatest thing you can do for rugging is to catch a horse and tie it up and unrug it, tie it up, and that normally solves the problem. So that's what I do. The thing to also tell her to do, teach her the backward forward yield exercise and just get her to back him up. So if he pins his ears at her, back him up. Ask him to do something. That can work. Yeah. So the whole carrot in the mouth trick, it could backfire if the timing is given. Like if he pins his ears at her and then gives a carrot, well, that's just going to reinforce that behavior. So yeah, it's a good thought, but could backfire. Okay. Next question. Karen, next comment, I should say, Karen. Back to the question about ears back. When asking a horse to move forward in the round yard, does this carry through to riding? Aya pins their ears when asked to trot and jams up. Yes, absolutely. Same thing is, it's normally like this is uncomfortable kind of thing. So it is defensiveness. It's not feeling good, and it's being quite like a more active kind of negative emotional outburst with that. Yeah, so it could be, and I'd say it's because she's had the unsoundness problems, and that's where it's crept in. And so what happens when a horse has been unsound, when they're unsound there and they get those negative defensive type emotional behaviors coming out, that's because there's discomfort. But after they've even got better, they carry that kind of pain memory. So you do have to work through that. But yeah, that's why their recovery is really important, and why, doing groundwork and everything like you are is helping her, develop the knowledge that she's no longer sore. Tracy, yes, I'm not aggressive with the whip. It's my extension of my arm. Oh, and yes, he hates the rug too. So we'll try your back up, come forward exercise. Yeah, definitely try that. Look, with the whip, I just want to say that using the whip, it's not about necessarily being aggressive, and lots of people perceive the whip like that. The whip has to be like, you got to remember, and what I try to discuss and make people understand, that applying escalating pressure it should never be done with aggression or a negative emotion from you. It's communication. Horses, their reality is created from the physical world of what they experience physically. It's a little different from ours. Ours is created socially. So if we go whip each other, we've got the physical experience, but we've also kind of got the social kind of traumatic experience as well. And with horses, if the whip's applied but they learn something from it, then they learn to navigate it, and therefore it goes into this, so it's okay. They don't end up being traumatized. It's when horses get lots of high pressure applied to them and they get hurt by it, or they can't work it out, that's where it actually turns into trauma. But if they learn that, if I stepped over that line or near her when she had food, then this happens, but they worked out they could avoid it, they're okay with that. Okay, I really realize I've got to talk a lot more about applying pressure. I've already talked a lot about it in the past, but I have to, because it's something that is actually really crucial to understand. It's very crucial to be done well. Of course, if it's done badly, it's horrendous. But you know, as I said, because horses actually have a reality that's created physically, and that's how you communicate to them, is that it's really got to be understood. So I'm not picking on you or whatever, you've just triggered something in me that I know I've got to talk a lot more about. So Tracy says, I'll tap him on the shoulder and say step back, and he does, no pinning. That's excellent. And that's the greatest thing you can do, is ask him to do something. So, you know, you can slam the whip down and blow him up and, you know, create a punishment, but the greatest thing you can actually get them to do is ask them to do something. That's what I've said about the groundwork and everything like that, about tell them to back up, tell them to send. And there's that Ray Hunt quote that says, don't say do. And what that means is don't say don't and punish, just get them to do something that means the horse will end up not doing the problem behavior but doing something else. And that's why tell them to back up. That's like, as you said, you ask him to back up and he does it. That's perfect. That's don't say do. That's do. That's back up. Okay, so that's why I focus on back up and send when it comes to horses with food aggression. Okay, all right, moving on. Okay, so this one, this is a good question. This is actually like a can of worms question. I could talk about this a lot, and there's a good chance I might run out of time here, but this is a really good question. A horse that is scared of the dragon corner. Okay, everyone has a dragon corner or the scary corner in an arena. Now, I want to go through this because I wrote it out in a bit of a way to try to get you guys to understand the causes, okay, what magnifies it, what to do about it, and that you need to get over some stuff as well. Okay, so everyone's implicated in this as well to a degree. Okay, so what causes the horse to have a dragon corner in the arena? Okay, well, if you handed me a sketch of any arena, I'd be able to tell you, I'll be able to put money on where the dragon corner or the scary corner will be. And it's typically the spot that's furthest from the gate. Okay, so the further away the horse gets from the gate, the more the negative emotions, okay, and the worry cup fills up. Okay, so that's where it typically is. Okay, it can also, causes are, it can be the furthest distance from the gate. Other causes is something could have happened there at that particular spot in the horse's past, and the horse has developed a negative association or a phobia with that particular place. So let me give you an example of, I've created a spot in the arena once with a horse by accident. Okay, so young horse, this is many, many years ago, just back from the breakers, okay, riding him around, it's all fine. And some ducks, you know, waddled out of the spot on the arena. And of course, he balked at them. And because I didn't really know what I was doing then, I ripped him around in the mouth because I had a panic over it as well. Okay. Now, what happened then with that horse, it is found at that particular spot, ducks came out, but then I attacked him. Okay, then he got ripped in the mouth. So he had this, you know, really quite nasty, painful experience and scary experience that happened in that spot. And then, you know, for years and years after that, he would be worried about that spot every time he went by. So that's how a scary corner or a scary spot can happen as well, from a bad experience. They remember, and horses have a long memory. It can also be the spot where there's lots of smells. Now, this is what we tend to be a little bit oblivious to. So there can be a few bushes or whatever, but they can be where, like, the track of the foxes have been or other animals. Okay, so it can be full of smells there. And lots of people notice this because it becomes the scary spot at certain times of the year. And that's because it's normally got foxes or dogs or something lurking around it that has a smell that we don't understand, that we don't get. So that can be the cause of scary corner. It can be the furthest bit from the gate. Something could have happened there, or it could be a spot of smells, etc. Okay? What magnifies it? What makes it worse? What makes it worse? Well, a full worry cup, or a worry cup that's full. So remember the whole analogy that horses can only handle 1 cup of worry, and all little worries, okay, they're like little bits of, water being added to the cup. So you might have saddles a bit uncomfortable, that adds a bit. Horse might be near dinner time, so it's quite stressed and worried about being fed. Okay, so that puts some stress in there. And then it's not really, it doesn't really have a good response to the bit, so it gets endured this kind of hauling around on its mouth, so that puts some stress in it. And then you end up with like a cup that's overflowing. So one little drip of something like a little branch, scary corner moving in the breeze will be enough to like spill the water out, and the horse will have a reaction. So a worry cup that's full of a whole lot of little things that all add up to lots of stress. And if you want to summarize what goes into the worry cup, it's things that, the horse lacks clarity, the horse lacks motivation to do what it is, because of pain or etc., or there's a confidence issue as well. So all those things basically can be categorized in as filling up the worry cup. Then what happens, the horse has elevated stress, which makes them view the world. So when a horse gets more stress and the worry cup gets more full, and this goes the same thing for humans. If you're like reached your maximum of being triggered by so many things, and I think, worry cup, you can also call it trigger stacking. Okay, there's lots of analogies and stuff to call it. But what happens when you flip into this zone, when you get quite a lot of, stress that you're carrying on board, your emotions flick negative. And what happens, it means you then start perceiving the world negative for threat. Okay, that's what happens. It's like an automatic switch goes on and you start looking at the world negatively. So that means when horses see things that might trigger them slightly, that, when they're feeling good, they just might glance at. But because they've got this negative lens they're looking at life at, they will react. So they'll overreact. And so what they do, they react first and they think second. Okay, and they're far away from it. Now, another thing that can cause it, which I've seen many, many times, which can magnify it, is this is really, really common when the horse is not following the rider. Okay, they're not following the feel. And I go on about people have to understand the following, that the horse has to learn to follow your feel. They just don't go from cue to cue. They got to stay with you, okay? And you got to train that. And my whole process that I do in all my courses and everything like that teaches you how to teach a horse to follow you, and you how to train a horse to follow you. So it happens when people don't understand this, and the rider is just being very passive. They're being a passenger. So they're sitting on the horse and they're looking at the horse and they're waiting for the horse to do something. They're not actually giving the horse anything to follow. They might be doing a circle, but they've just put the horse on a curved line, but they're not actively on that themselves, okay? It's where their thoughts are. And so that can mean that the horse is kind of lost. When you don't give the horse anything to follow and the horse is just put in the direction, that can actually fill a worry cup in itself. And I do this experiment at clinics all the time. I get people to, my common thing, I have these things that I commonly say. And the common thing I say at clinics is look up and ride somewhere. Pick a point and ride somewhere. Like the horse is your legs, okay? Because that's how you got to be. And as soon as I do that and they start riding, the horse stops being worried about everything. And then I tell them to stop riding somewhere, and you'll see the horse will change. I've actually got some good footage of a horse, of someone doing that. Okay, so that can also magnify it, is when riders are not aware that their thoughts and where they're riding, and if they're mentally actively riding somewhere, it doesn't happen. But if they're not actively mentally riding and they're stuck in the what if zone, which lots of people do if they've lost their confidence, that can actually magnify it as well. Now, this is another really, really important thing that I want to talk about when it comes to the dragon zone or the scary zone in the arena, is the shrinking comfort zone. So this is also really common in horses that are not exposed to different environments. So if you never take your horse out to expose it to the world, and you only ever ride it in the one place in the arena, that world for that horse shrinks, because horses actually have to learn, and it's part of training, and you got to teach them how to process the environment, because horses they learn the environment really well, like a bit of a photographic memory. And if they're only ever ridden in the same place, small changes start worrying them even more. Okay, so the horse never goes out and about. He lives in the same place. He never goes anywhere. It's only ever ridden in the same spot. That spot where they're ridden will progressively over time become more and more scary. And it's because they're not exposed to changing environments. So because their environment is fixed and they're not exposed to lots, small changes worry it. Whereas when you get horses out and about and they learn to process different environments and changing environments, and you exercise this ability to emotionally process the world, okay, it doesn't happen. Okay, so if you restrict it and you don't give them experiences, their world shrinks and they become very subjected to getting worried to minor, tiny changes in the environment. Okay, that's why getting out and about on a horse is really important. And that doesn't mean you got to ride it. That means taking it for a walk, leading it places. The other thing is that it's all part of that whole following the feel and what you've got to learn how to do, because the horse also, besides the horse having to learn to exercise its mind to processing changing environments, it's also got to learn to use you as a filter. So when a horse in a herd environment, they use each other as a filter. So some horses are really good at emotionally processing. They're the horses that we call the leader type horses. And they're able to process the environment really well. So they're able to ascertain whether something's worrying or not. Is this a worry or isn't? They're the horses that make those decisions, and they're really good at it. And then other horses in the herd are less good at it. Okay, so the less good horses are at it, the more they defer their decision making and their emotional processing to these other horses. So what you've got to do when you work with horses is you've got to become that filter. You've got to train them to follow you and get better at it themselves, so they're better at being able to emotionally process the environment, but they also refer to you. So if you're okay, they're okay. Okay, so that's another thing when it comes to the dragon zone or scary corner in the arena. That's another factor. Okay, so there we go. I've gone through causes, I've gone through what magnifies it, and then I'd want to know, what do you do about it? Okay, what do you do about that part of the arena? Well, this is what I recommend. So you come to me, you say, this is your problem, this is what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you to get some cones, and I'm going to tell you to cordon off that part of the arena so it doesn't exist in your world anymore. Okay, I'm going to tell you just to cordon it off. Doesn't exist. Okay, I want you to stop worrying about it. It doesn't exist in your arena at the moment. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, I want you to completely do a full reboot or retrain of your horse. I want to retrain the horse, and I want to retrain. I've got to recreate this relationship and connection with you and your horse. So I'd put you through my complete program in the round yard first, if you've got one. If not, starting at groundwork. But I got to rebuild this connection between the two of you. Okay, I've got to give you skills, and I've got to start emotionally processing and exercising this horse's mind to be able to cope with change. Okay, then, when things start progressing along and groundwork and everything's coming along, and we're out of the round yard and we're into the arena, well, that cordoned off area of scary zone is going to become the party time zone. Okay, that's going to be where everything good happens. That's going to be where there's carrots, there's resting, there's a whole lot of good things happens in that bad place. Because what we're going to do, we're going to counter condition it. The horse sees it negative, you probably see it negative too, and we're going to make that spot where everything good happens. Okay, then as part of the process, I'm also going to encourage you to get your horse out and about. Okay, even in groundwork, you're going to take it over to a friend's house and take it, groundwork it over there. You're going to take it for lots of walks. You're going to get that horse out of this shrinking comfort zone, okay, and get it to experience different things, different sights, smells, noises, and teach that horse and show that horse that it can emotionally process and survive, because that's going to give that horse, a big step up in being able to exercise this ability in its mind that it needs. Okay, now what's going to happen when you've completely changed that horse's point of view, and even when you get to riding and stuff like that, it's going to be the spot that you rest. It's going to be the spot you get carrots. It's going to be the spot you end. Then what happens, you know that horses change. It'll tell you, the horse tells you that it's changed its whole mind about that spot when it starts dragging you there, okay? When it starts saying, oh, how about we go over to that spot and have a rest? Then you know you can start riding in that spot again. But you only ever do, you don't add pressure to that spot, okay? It's where you'll do walk transitions and just hang out. Or it won't be a spot where you do hard laterals or anything like that. You gradually reintroduce it, okay? So that's my nutshell about how you fix up the scary zone in the arena. You fix up your relationship first, okay, get that working, and then you counter condition the spot with a lot of positiveness, and then you reintroduce it with a lot of strategy and care, okay? Now, the last little bit I'll say on this, and I think I've nearly done, but you need to get over that spot too, okay? Because people do get over that spot. That you get a phobia about it as well. So you got to learn to, you know, look up and ride forward. You've got to be rebooted in part of my reboot process. Okay? All right, so just going to go to the comments now. Okay, let's have a look. Zoe, okay, I use don't say do to get myself to do things. It's a surprisingly effective technique. It is. It's cool. You don't beat yourself up. You just do something else. That's really cool. Oh, God, Luke, you give me something fancy pants on there. I'll leave that for you. Okay, Lindsay, yeah, it's trigger stacking, yeah. Trigger stacking, worry cup, they're all the same things. It's, you know, any living creature can only cope with so much before it's overwhelmed and over aroused, okay? Zoe, I have to remind myself to take rocks out of my worry cup someday. True. Deb, okay, Deb Branston. Smells like the dog and bone. Yeah, example. Yeah, Deb had a great example of having a bone. You know, she'd given a dog a bone, and the horse has got a bit worried about the backyard because it could smell rotting food, and that's a bit of a trigger for it. If I hadn't known there was a bone there previously, I wouldn't have known what made him stop and balk. Yeah, that is really interesting. Smells are very powerful for horses. We don't know about them. We're dumb when it comes to smells. Kath Knoll, let's have a look what you've said. Okay, we don't have a corner, but Zeus remembers where he saw a kangaroo jump out in front of him and will watch the same place each ride. Yeah, they got good memories. He can sometimes react, but usually just keep moving him forward, yeah, which can sometimes mean that he runs past a little fast, yeah. But I try to remind him that he's got a job to do and we're right in the middle of it. I can read him pretty well now and know when his head is thinking about kangaroos. That's awesome, Kath. Now, Kath's one of those riders that actually, she really rides the horse. Okay, so Kath Knoll's got very strong thoughts and she really carries horses with her. And that's, yeah, I have no surprise that you're able to get past it by doing that, Kath, because you just keep looking forward and riding, and that's massive to helping horses get over it. But just say if you struggle with it, myself, I struggled with that. Okay, so I'm not a natural rider. I had to learn how to ride forward and connect the horse up. Okay, I was one of those riders that didn't realize that they'd go into paralysis or just sit there, or I wasn't riding forward. I had to learn that. Okay. Tracy, I've only started riding again after 25 years. New mares, not confident, but I have pushed myself to go out with friends on trail and go to a friend's arena. Dogs, cars, kangaroos. I have made myself be confident so my green mare feels confident, except the water. Okay, she gets better as we cross more often, but next ride she'll be back to panicky behavior. Okay, so that's touching on what you said before, and that's the whole thing. When someone's on the back, you know that thing about that I said about you got to ride over the water? So you got to look up and ride somewhere beyond that water. Okay, and if you're going with other people, get the other people to go first. You look up, you ride forward. You take her mentally over that water. Okay, so you can try that. There is a lot more that you can actually do as well, and like specifically for you, I'd really recommend you read my confidence and trust book that I've got, because you've had a 25-year break. You might want to know a few things that are going through your mind as well when you're riding. That might actually help. So that's my recommendation for you. Tracy, yes, dragon spot, a rest spot. Yep. That's the easiest thing to do. Lindsay, yeah, pigs. Pig smells really, horses don't like pigs. And yes, oh my God, I look at the water. Yeah, I bet you do. You don't look at the water. Don't look, just look beyond it. Point a tree in the distance and like just put all your thoughts on that tree in the distance. All right, now I've still got one question to do, but I might do a can of worms question because it is a great question. All right, guys, thank you for joining me, and I look forward to next live. In fact, as I said, I'll probably do a can of worms as well because the question's can of worms worthy. Okay, guys, good to see you all. Talk to you soon. Bye.